Welcome home. We are WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. We've been out on the road the last couple of days. This baseball trading deadline's been crazy. A wild series of events around my mom's birthday last week and my wedding anniversary, and my wife and I getting out to some concerts and not getting to some other concerts, and her having a broken ankle at one point earlier this summer and doing much better. But we made some shows, some other shows. We didn't make the Foo Fighters. We didn't make Pat Benatar, which broke my heart, but not my wallet. We did get to see the great Chrissy Hind of Akron, Ohio. And we did get out, and we got a chance to see Sammy Hagar and Loverboy, who I love a lot. But I made my way out to Ohio in a car, courtesy of Royal Farms. Thank you for gassing me up out in Hagerstown, Royal Farms. We need to add more of those up Breezewood and whatnot. But I went out to a place called Blossom Music Center. It's a place that's been on my radar for many, 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 many years. I almost saw Gloria Estefan there many, many years ago. There's just a lot of things that could have happened. Wish I would have seen the Michael Stanley Band there, but I never made it there. And I finally made it there because Thomas Dolby, my good friend, Baltimorean by choice, the good professor, it invited me, but also I had friends out there, and Sammy Hagar and my dear friend Bernard McKinney, and this guy, Cleveland sports radio legend Munch Bishop. Every time we get together, I really screwed up. I should have called Reg Eye too. I always tell him I'm going to say,
"Oh, dude, he would have joined us in a second."
Jai, why now?
My
I got to
fault.
drive back.
Fault.
I got to drive back now.
Yeah, get back here.
Munch Bishop has been on the air. What, 40s, 50s? How many years? How many years?
You know what? August 15th will be my 45th anniversary, dog.
All right, 45
That's more
years.
that's older than you. That's more years than your age.
Well, one day I'll get you back here for a crab cake on the Maryland Crab Cake Tour presented by the Maryland Lottery. I'll give you a Gold Rush Sevens doubler. I'll give you a Raven scratch off. I'll do that all for you. Also, our friends at Liberty Pure Solutions and Jiffy Lube putting us out on the road. You're exactly the kind of guy that I would love to have, and I bring this up because I invited you to dine with me. You switch schedules. You move things around. I said, look, I can only really do this Monday morning. I'm coming into the city. I drove in literally to be with you and to have breakfast, but I was going to go to the Rock Hall. Like, that was my thought.
What happened?
I just got tired. I mean, the driving
dude,
and being,
come on, man.
and I had a really good seat for Sammy Hagar, and I know the energy that I bring to that kind of show. And I took a nap. I pulled the curtains in my hotel room out in a Stowe or wherever I was, and I napped for about 3 hours. I got up around 3:30. I showered. It was raining sideways. I was so glad I didn't get lawn seats. And then I went and I partied with your people. I was out in God's country there in the Cuyahoga Forest, out with mosquitoes and like real Cleveland rock and roll fans, man. Like, I had an 80s experience on Sunday night with an intimate gathering, and then it was a mob scene with Van Halen and rock and rollers. But I want to tell you about breakfast with you, because if you're the guy, I would bring a crab cake here. And I went out.
Guess what? Wait, hold on. I had people, when we posted photos of us at breakfast and little stories, people from your great city, from Annapolis, asking, Nestor had to bring you a crab cake, right? And I said, no, I got to come there and get them fresh, hot off the grill.
Well, here's what I did. I took you to my favorite place, and it's a place it's a place called Lucky's Cafe. It's in Tremont, very close to where the Christmas Story House is. You can see downtown, beautifully outlined from there. It's a lovely community. It's right off the highway. So, I came and found you. I got a parking spot. It's crazy on a Saturday morning. I mean, I've stood in line getting free coffee for an hour and a half to get in there to get a shipwreck, right? So you got a spot, but they have this beautiful bakery. And I just want to give you some love because, like, I don't know what I don't like mustard enough for you to get me stadium mustard or some stupid chili sauce that they put on something out there, some Braunschweiger.
You don't like the ballpark mustard, the brown?
I don't eat that. No, I ain't eating that.
Oh, I got to have it.
But this is the best scone I've ever had in my life. And it came from Tremont in Cleveland.
You still have it? I love it.
No, I have two of them. I have the pistachio tart cherry, which my wife's like, it's not pistachio enough for me. I'm like, give it to me. And then she's like, but
Ooh.
that blueberry coconut that I sort of scored, I was expecting to get 51% of that. I'm going to get about 24% of that. And I have a little piece of it right here. So I'm just telling you, I don't know what you could have taken, and I will have to take you to Costas, Coco's, Fadley's, Pap. I'm going to have to take you the whole tour,
Okay.
everywhere. I'm going to have to take you everywhere in town and get you crab cakes everywhere. But you did me right at Lucky's because I could never have better breakfast or better scones to bring home to my wife. But I love our conversations, man. I mean, all these years of doing this crazy crap where we take react phone calls from knuckleheads on trade deadline day. The day after trade deadline, you and I can have a scone and a crab cake and make nice after all we've been through, right? I mean, come on
Well
now. Tony
said.
Fernandez, Benitez, we stole your football team. You know what I'm
We can go
saying?
on and on, brother.
Go on
You
and
stole
on.
our without any remorse. You stole our football team.
You and I mean, we are peace for what's going on in Gaza, for what's going on in Ukraine. We can make peace. Cleveland and Baltimore,
Yeah, there's no doubt.
we can make peace.
There's no, I just came back from Poland and Slovakia visiting the roots, and it's interesting when you're right there how staunch the Polish Slovakian people are, and things that we believe in too for freedom because it's right there. But we've got it made in a big, big way. And what's interesting is that as soon as I came back from breakfast, the wife is like, "Okay, when are we going this week?" So tomorrow's the Mrs. Munch and I's a day at Lucky's.
Well, you tell everybody out in Lucky's, including Cat, our server, and everybody
Yes.
there. Magnifique. I drove 6 hours thinking about this, going. So I have a little piece of that. I'm going to eat this when you start talking about the trade deadline because we're going to rev up. Before I rev up baseball, I want to
Okay.
rev up Cleveland and my experiences. I mean, first off,
Please do.
every time I drive in, I drive through Twinsburg. I had a girlfriend in Twinsburg. I text her a picture. I drive to Parma. I had a girlfriend in Parma many, many years ago. Basement flats, 90s. I text her a picture, said, I'm back in your homeland. I reached to Bernard. Reg I apologize to you,
Bernard's good
dude.
people. He was my producer for the longest time.
Tell me about Bernard McKinney, the Bernard McKinney you know.
Do you know what? Bernard McKinney, good people, big heart. He's he gets in a tunnel. He's there, but it's a good thing. And I've never had a fastidious taskmaster producer like him. My shows were so much better when he was behind the window. And when he said reset, brother, I made sure I had a reset, or he'd be over during a commercial break giving me that finger saying, hey, because he knows what's the best. But he's good people. You know what? He would give you, and you hear this about a lot of people, but it's not true, the shirt off his back. If I would call him at 5 a.m. Now, he does live just one burb over.
Dude, I called him at midnight and almost needed the bed to sleep in Sunday night, so I know about this, Munch,
Yeah, and he's like there if you need him. Yeah, Bernard, we love you, man, all around him. In fact, it was funny.
It's another Cleveland guy. Damn me for talking nice about these Cleveland people.
No, come on,
they're trying
nice
to beat our
you.
baseball team this weekend now. Come on.
I talk nice about you too, man. But you know what Bernard is too? Is that when he was producing, and something was coming up with Baltimore when I first started the show at ESPN 850 WKNR. He's like, you know what? Let's get my buddy on from Baltimore. I said, what buddy? Not Nestor. That's my buddy. He goes, well, that's my buddy. And bingo. So it's like the proverbial small world.
Well, I spent a Sunday night with Bernard out on the hill at Blossom. And listen, I've been to the Convocation Center. I've seen Meatloaf there. I've been to the Gund a million times for basketball. I saw hockey. I saw the Lumberjacks play there with an old girlfriend who loved hockey in Cleveland. Progressive, the Mistake on the Lake. I think I told you my Johnny Oates story off air about being chased down in the old locker room there.
Right.
And, but I had never been to Blossom. And I had heard, this is the rock and roll capital. I mean, the Rock Hall's there.
Yeah.
And Blossom.
Alan Freed, Moondog Ball, yeah.
I just want to say this out loud for anybody in my audience who listens to me and loves sports and loves music and likes my take on music and remembers me as a rock critic. If you saw the biopic, the thing we did on my career, the documentary about how intimate my relationship was at Merriweather in the 80s for all those concerts and stuff. Blossom was built just like Merriweather, and it's untouched. So it's like Merriweather, they added flank seating, and now, Merriweather's beautiful. Merriweather's stunning, but it's modern, and it's all of that. Blossom's a real throwback to awesomeness. And I just,
60s.
I loved my two nights. And I had a guy at the bathroom filling water, lawyer, imagine that, at the Sammy Hagar show. I hit it off with this guy and his wife. We're BSing, my hair's out. I'm wearing my red rocker stuff, which you know about with Sammy.
Oh,
And he's trying to talk me into staying another night to go see Def Leppard and go see Journey.
last night at Progressive Field.
Well, Cheap Trick opened the show, and had I really known that ahead of time, my wife wouldn't have gotten the car back. And
What?
she probably would have gotten stale scones or fresh stones because I would have gone
I
back
had
to
tickets
Lucky's
for you
again.
too, bro. And I want to hit you with this on Blossom. Originally, Blossom was built for the Cleveland Symphony Orchestra.
Well, said that. So same was Merriweather. Yes.
One of the finest in the world, and Kent State University was behind the project. They still have a theater there. But bro, I'm going back. Oh my gosh, 50 plus years to Pink Floyd, 2 nights of Michael Stanley there, 2 nights of Stanley at the old Coliseum. I mean, the shows are just amazing, and they continue to be amazing. Hagar and Van Halen there. And you mentioned before, of course, that Pat Benatar, Neil Giraldo, Cleveland guy, went to Valley Forge High School. I wish you could have seen him, because I want you to remember this name. The band opening them for them on tour called the Vindies. They're Youngstown kids, all righty? They love their city so much, they took their name to Vindies off the now defunct newspaper, The Vindicator. And bro, they will blow you away. So you have a shot. They come through, play a lot of small clubs. They're touring now with Neil and Pat. They saw them. They go, you got to come on with us. Remember that name. I know you love music. You love to rock and roll. The Vindies.
Yeah, man. Neil and Pat. I mean, I love you, but it priced me out. We just didn't. We couldn't do a $300 Pat Benatar night, and we saw her last summer, and she's magic. I mean,
yeah.
So I need to say this to you, because you said Michael Stanley's name a couple of times, and
driving friend in the world, miss him.
Driving around Cleveland, I heard Donnie Iris, because he's playing the Akron something soon. So I was listening.
Theater, I believe.
I was listening to classic rock. Is it WNEW? Maybe, does that sound right? So I'm listening.
That's New York. WNCX.
ONE.
Also, that's Akron, Canton. NCX is Cleveland.
ONE's the one. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm listening. NEW. I'm thinking New York. ONE. Yeah. Like U2 one. So. Or like Metallica one, and you can go either way. I'm talking to a Cleveland rock guy here.
Dude, let's rock and roll.
So I'm driving. I had classic rock on in the car, driving around. I stayed in the suburbs. I only came into the city for the hour I sconed with you and had a shipwreck and a cup of coffee. I literally got in my car, got back on the freeway, and went right out, because I didn't have the mojo. I didn't have the jam, as Mick would say, to go over to the hall all day and then party all night.
You had to recharge the batteries.
I recharged my batteries, but I was in the car a lot. I mean, I drove so far I couldn't get Royal Farms gas anymore, which ticked me off. So
I don't know Royal Farms, so I apologize.
Well, I don't want to know sheets, so I apologize. or Circle K. So let me tell you. So I'm driving, and I literally was leaving Akron in the rain Tuesday morning, listening to this and that, and music was on. And I got my iPod. I could put any music I want on, but I like listening to local radio and seeing what's up. And I pulled into Butler, Pennsylvania, across the border, and this great station came on. And they were playing REO Speedwagon. They played 157 Riverside, but like the 15-minute version of it.
Oh,
the
dude,
live
with the
crazy
piano
version.
in there, love it.
Oh, with all of that, right?
Yeah.
With the rap in it, all of that. And then they play a song that's a Michael Stanley band song, right? And I'm listening to it. And I don't have satellite radio or anything. I don't. I own an AM radio. So I'm a terrestrial creature.
Dude, I'm with you 100%.
Right? I mean, I'm all over the internet and all over the world, but I just don't have satellite radio. So I'm listening, and I'm hearing this song, and it's catchy, and I know it's Michael Stanley band, and I'm
what tune was it? You know,
My Town. My Town.
Dude,
I've never heard that song. I listened to it. I'm like, I was pulling into literally a rest stop in the Pennsylvania side, because I'm of that age. I got to use the restroom. But I pulled in. I got to stretch. Really, I was stretching at every rest stop. It took me 6 hours.
I'm with you, dog.
But I pulled over and I Shazammed it, and Shazamming it allowed me, literally, it's on my Shazam right there. But My Town, Michael Stanley Band. I Shazammed it at the 10:48 a.m. On the way home, and I now have to have that song, and I want you to tell me about Michael Stanley, because I didn't really know you knew him like that, but I know he was in radio. But like, I remember him as a local rocker, and in Baltimore we have Kicks, we have my dear friend John Allen from Childhood.
Right.
It's different local celebrities. He led just a beautiful Cleveland life, Michael Stanley.
Yeah, he was Cleveland all the way through. I'm going to start you at the end, sadly, and work back. All righty? Is that I knew that Michael was getting near the end. We texted, almost on a daily basis. And he used to tell me, dude, you're the only person that's allowed to text me when I'm in the air because we like the same kind of music. He would have a request hour. I was on a different station, so he couldn't take my call. You know what I mean? But
Right.
I would text
Like
him
Marty
stuff.
Bass could never take my call at Channel 13.
Yeah,
either.
yeah. And it's funny because I would say to him, hey, dude, play this, play that. And once I said to him, brother, I want to hear something by Poco. And he went nuts. And a commercial break comes on and my phone rings and it's identified as Michael Stanley. He goes, dude, no wonder I love you. You're a Poco guy? I said, I'm a huge Poco guy. He goes to me, he goes, I'd love to play it, but I can't. So call my PD and tell him that you need me to play some Poco. I said, dude, Bill's not going to listen to me. Bill Lewis was a dear brother too. I go, he'll listen to you. You're Michael Stanley. He goes, yeah, but he's my boss. But the morning Michael Stanley passed away, I was having coffee with my sons in Tremont, at a little coffee shop called Civilization. He lived 5-6 doors down. And my phone rang that, yeah, Michael had passed away. The next call came from my program director saying, how far are you from the station? Now, this is another company, another station. I said 10 minutes. It was like 10:30 because I want you to get on the air, do a show, a tribute show to him for 11 to 3. Can you do that? I mean, this is 40 minutes till airtime, no guests or anything. I said, I'll be there. He goes, play any music you want, tell any stories you want, take calls. So I started calling people for guests. And here's what's touching. Had called Donnie Iris. Donnie answered crying, was so torn up and torn up to the point. This just shows you what kind of heart and what kind of human being he is. He goes, Munch, I just can't go on with you because I couldn't talk. You know, I'd be crying the whole time as we remembered Michael. So flashback, and you ready for this, bro? Calls were still lined up when I left 4 hours later for people to tell stories, great stories about Michael. I used to drive by WNCX on the way to my station downtown, about an hour before Michael went on the air. And he'd be outside smoking a cigarette, which sadly led to his downfall. But I'd open the car window and yelled at him, hey, put that out. And he'd yell at me, you're not my dad. I said, no, I'm your big brother. So cut that out. But Michael was amazing. Heard him for the first time as a solo acoustic artist back in the late 60s, early 70s. Then he added a couple of bands. He did a version of the Beatles' Help that will give you goosebumps. Michael also was a baseball player. Ready for this, brother? He had a D3. They don't give scholarships per se, but they'll give you some aid. He had a D3 to Hiram College, east of the city of Cleveland. He was one heck of a baseball player. And so Michael, the band just grew. He grew. Interesting, was very heavy up until St. Louis and that. You know how I don't understand because some bands, have it. He had it. But he was happy what he did. He never regretted anything. I mean, sold out Blossom 3 nights in a row, 20,000, 2 nights in a row. The Coliseum sold it out back to back. Just amazing catalog, amazing songs. Cool thing
Well,
too.
everybody in my era would know he can't love you like I love you, right? Like,
yeah, that was
a fun.
Kevin Raleigh, who I went to grade school with. That was his song with the Michael Stanley Band. Kevin's now out west climbing mountains out in the Sierra Nevadas and that. But here's the cool thing too with Michael, Cleveland all the way. And for my town, oh, bro, no, if I get teary-eyed, because had he been around, here's what he would do for you. He did a lot of versions where, my town, we go, Cleveland, it's all right. I had him do one when I was in Columbus, it's all right. He would have gladly done Baltimore, it's all right. He did a Youngstown, he did a Pittsburgh, he did a Erie, did Detroit, all the cities around, he did those. And you look at the words to that song, it's amazing. And it talks about pride for a city that's hard scrabble, city that's had its ups and downs. But you know what? Love or hate her, don't matter. This town is my town, and we love sharing it with you. So, Michael just went on, always played, 3-4 gigs
I had
a
never
year.
heard that song, Munch. I heard it, and it was very clearly Michael Stanley because it had it had that Rick Springfield early 80s vibe to it.
Good chords, good power chords.
Yeah,
and I'll
man,
tell
just
you
great
this,
pop music, man.
you're
Power
a rocker.
pop,
This will
the
give you
knack.
goosebumps. he was playing a venue right downtown across from the ballpark called Tower City Amphitheater that now has been dismantled because that's where the new Cavaliers practice facility is going to go in that. And I'm there with my 4 kids. And second row, have somebody tap me on the shoulder. Goes, hey, could you come around with me real quick? I said, well, my kids were like probably 10, 12, and 14, so it was cool. And I said, yeah, I didn't know what he wanted. Takes me backstage, hands me a tambourine, goes, stay here. They break into my town. Michael Stanley goes, I'm going to bring out a buddy of mine to join us in on this tune. So I kind of tried to stay to the back. It's his show, you know what I mean? But hung out with the bass player, the percussionist, banging on the tambourine a little bit.
You never forget singing backup with a band on stage. You know what I mean?
Singing the chorus.
I was on stage at the Agora in Cleveland singing House That We Used to Live In with the Smithereens with Jane Scott in attendance. How about that for a Cleveland memory, huh?
Jane Scott was such a special woman. Oh my, it's amazing.
She was a legend. She was 80 that night.
Yeah, they have a bronze statue of her sitting on a bench with her notepad. And you know what she taught me at an early age? She always carried a bag with her to concerts. In her bag, she always had water, some snacks, toilet paper, some liquid soap before it was a big thing. She had her concert emergency package. And bro, think about this. Who respected her? The Beatles came to town, or Paul would come to town, or in the area, Ringo. Got to talk to Jane
She
Scott.
is in the middle of this nightclub. She's 80 years old. She's got her bag. She's up in the rail. She knew Pat well. Every band would pay tribute to her when they would come through town. The night that we were there, the guys from the Raspberries, they did the other guy, I know we've talked about this. Time Won't Let Me. Time won't
Sonny
let
Geracio,
me.
grade school with Sonny, bro. He was a greaser. Used to always work me over in the hall. I said, "Come on, Sonny, we're in this together, brother." You know, it was the St. Henry's 183rd Harvard Month. Look at all these things coming out.
By the way, I got something for you, and then we'll get to baseball. Munch Bishop is here from the land of Cleve. They're not all bad guys. I mean, we revere Crack the Sky here, and they're a Pittsburgh band. I mean, John Palumbo, they're a Pittsburgh band.
Donnie Iris is a Pittsburgh guy.
Donnie Iris, that's what I say, Donnie Iris in Cleveland. So we have it's a whole Bermuda Triangle. I have my Poco belt buckle here. Can you see that?
Oh my gosh.
There's my
Poco belt guy too.
Well, I'm a belt buckle guy, but I love Pogo as well. And anything with Timothy B. Schmidt touched, I'm all about. So I'm all for that. So Munch Bishop is here. By the way, I mean, Joe Walsh, there's another Ohio guy. I went and saw the Pretenders the other night. I mean, and Chrissy's never going back to Ohio, but we're going back to Ohio.
Yes, indeed.
I'll come back to Lucky's. And by the way, the more I talk to you, the more scone is left for me at the end. And I have really delicious Royal Farms Kona Blend coffee here. I'm good. So
I love it.
Baseball. Let's get to baseball because we go
real quick.
My
wife says, "What are you going to talk to your buddy Nestor about?" I said, "I'll bet you a good portion of it's going to be about music and rock and roll." And that's what Sports Rockers is all about, baby. They're all combined. They're all one.
If the weather held up on Tuesday, I'm kind of pissed I didn't go down to the baseball ballpark. I thought to myself, because I could have spent Tuesday night in Cleveland, no problem. I have my computer, I can work to it. But I really screwed up. I should now that Cheap Trick opened, because I'm a Cheap Trick guy. I would have done it. And I love that.
All right, Dad.
I don't love concerts in these baseball stadiums. People bitch about Hershey here, and I'm like, give me Hershey any day over Nationals Park to see Green Day next week. So, I mean, Hootie and the Blowfish or Bruce Spring, anything that's going around. These football stadiums are terrible for all of that as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel bad that I didn't stay for that and go to the Rock Hall. But Cleveland pulls me back every time, and it's pulling the baseball teams together this weekend. Look, I can have all this fun. We're half an hour into this with Munch Bishop from Cleveland, and the baseball teams converging as first place teams after a trading deadline. It's its own thing that we don't need to talk about Blossom or Michael Stanley or rock and roll or the Rock Hall or any of that. The baseball story for what you and I have been through, and you've never had a championship there, right? I mean, you're much older than me.
My lifetime, yes.
Right. I mean, right. And I've had 83. I remember 79, but we haven't had a taste of it. You guys cost us that with the Benitez Fernandez thing. I remember being in the dugout for all of that stuff. We're talking three decades ago, bro.
Yeah.
So
think about that.
This is really, you're in the way. We're in the way. The Yankees are in the way. The Astros look like they might be in the way. Trading deadline. I'll tell you what, just on a I've been up all morning talking to Luke about this. I'll be talking about it for the next
Give
10
Luke my
weeks.
best. Good people. You know,
Yeah,
you got a gem there.
you are. Thank you. He loves you as well. He's missing out on the scones. I didn't share with him. And the shipwreck didn't come. You got to go to Cleveland. We'll have to come back for a playoff
Wait,
game
tell me
for
about
that.
the shipwreck real quick. You keep mentioning it. People are wondering what the heck's a shipwreck. It's everything basically in one breakfast, right?
Yeah, it's just like a big tub of awesomeness of egg
Yeah.
and cheese and sausage and bacon
And the
and
eggs and
peppers
okra,
and
they're all
eggs
together, baby.
and potatoes. It's just all in there. So it's a thing. It's like a souffle of stuff of
Of goodness, like
awesomeness.
you said, yes.
It's a quiche of deliciousness, but not
Yes.
quiche, eggy. So the baseball side of what transpired in the time I was at Blossom and the time that Luke evaporated with Chad Steele out in Ravens camp because we didn't have a representative there Monday and Tuesday, and I was representing Lucky's Cafe. The trading thing happened. We did a lot of stuff. You know what I mean? Like from the Orioles perspective, and I know you cover the whole league and you look at it. I don't know that they did anything that feels like incredibly impactful beyond Eflin and having him next year, but this has been an incredibly there's a lot to talk about with baseball here this week in regard to the Orioles, in regard to the Guardians, in regard to who's going to be in the AL World Series side.
Yeah, it's interesting too. You find out who actually has these deep farm systems that they tell us about, because that was one of the reasons the Dodgers were able to make the moves that they made. Now, I do know this for a fact that the Guardians were looking at a few other pitchers that they fell short on. Fetty from Chicago, they definitely had a huge interest in him. However, and I've always said before, prospects are just that. I could talk about Bobby Bradley and Owen Miller, okay? But they just didn't want to part with a couple of guys. DeLauder is one of them. They looked at Fetty. Jack Flaherty's name came up, also came up with the Yankees. But you know what? Come on. The writing was on the wall.
We tried that last year here. I'm out.
Yeah.
I'll pass on Jack Flaherty. Thank you.
The thing with Jack Flaherty, too, he's an LA guy. So where was he going? And
Dude, he might beat us in 2 games of the World Series, but
Yeah.
I'm still okay with the fact that, like Evaldi last year, like if it happens that way, you put your chips in. And the thing I learned on our end,
you make it a try, yeah.
The thing I learned about Elias, and if I were writing a column on this, and again, you're one of the first people I've talked about post all of this at all as I process it all, and I haven't read everything sane people have to say or write about it. And I saw Major League Baseball thought that they should have gone further in on Tanner Scott, whom somebody they know. If they felt like Tanner Scott was a difference maker for them, I think maybe they would have gone that way. But the value of the prospects in every case, and all the names, the Crochets, the Scoobles, none of those guys got moved around at all because the price was too high. And the Orioles were considered by far the deepest, richest farm system by everybody.
Love that.
And I've never been able to say that out loud in 30 years around here, ever. So hats off to John Angelos for coming up with Mike Elias and allowing this to happen. So I'll even give John Angelos some love in this piece, but not my scones from Lucky's. I would say this, the value of all of that and money, the Orioles took on some money, which with Eloy Jimenez and stuff, stuff we've never seen. The Rubenstein thing, what you see is what you get, which is Stowers, Norby, these around the edges prospects, but Kerstedt, Kauser, Holiday, Mayo, Basayo, who's further down in a cat. You're not touching any of those guys. I'm going to bring you in. I'm going to pour you bottom shelf and tell you it's top shelf, but you ain't touching the top shelf because it ain't touchable.
And that's what the Guardians did too. No Manzardo, no DeLauder, no Brito. They parted with Tania, although I had the shoulders shrugged on him and a couple of the other start. Even Josh Naylor, who had his ups and downs. You're not getting Josh Naylor either, an established player. And that's who people were looking for.
What has made the Guardians so good as we just dive right on into this as to if people are picking up the plot right now into August in first place baseball and the Orioles on the rocks right now, making a lot of nothing structural. It was all around the edges, right? It's all about pinch hitters and the relief pitchers and whatever, but I shouldn't say that. Eflin structural, so is Rogers for control for pitching. The Orioles made an admission they don't have enough pitching, which was clear to everybody.
You never do. The Braves didn't when they had 3 Hall of Famers.
But I also question why the Phillies want to get rid of 2 relief pitchers when they have to win in October too.
Think about that. Makes a lot of sense. You asked me about the Guardians' success. You mentioned one of them. The bullpen has been unbelievable. Clausse has his swagger back. It was from 2 years ago, not pitching like last year. And the starters have just been good enough. You know what it's like to lose 3 starters. That's exactly what the Guardians did. And losing Bieber for the year, and then that's through to surgery and injury. And also McKenzie and Allen in the minor leagues now. And poor Tristan needs to have surgery trying to put it off. He's still getting raked pretty hard in AAA. Logan Allen needs to find his control. But the core of starters has been just good enough to turn it over to the bullpen. Right now, you give 5-6 innings. I know that makes me cringe for a starter giving 5. But if you get 5-6, it's going to be lights out. They run the bases with not with reckless abandon. Although there's times that I see a guy try to score from third when the infield's drawn in, scratches my head. If I was coaching a little league team and somebody tried to do that, especially with men on first and third or no force play there, I would question it. But they get an infield hit a game because they run hard through first base, the proverbial, they run to the cut of the grass, they steal, they play pretty good defense. At times I've seen defense cost them a game, at least 2 games in the last few weeks, but they get just enough hits. And Nestor, when you look at the start of the lineup, it was Quan, young Angel Martinez, and now it's Lane Thomas. You have Jose Ramirez, you have Naylor, you have Fry. Oh, I just mentioned 4 all-stars there in the first 5 hitters. Jimenez, not just a platinum glover, but he should be hitting better than he is. I mean, the bats, there's no reason this team should get shut out or 1 or 2 hit at all, and they have in the last couple of weeks. I believe that, with the proverbial little break over the All-Star game, I've seen some life coming to these guys again. But again, the secret has been in the bullpen.
The Orioles were listless for a month, right?
Yeah.
So much like the Guardians were struggling getting up on the All-Star game and looking around and saying nobody's coming to get us. In the American League East, it's different, and I think
Yeah,
for
very
trying
much
to
so.
fortify pitching and how expensive it is to fortify pitching, I got to say this though. I was watching the All-Star game and your representative there and whatnot, and every time I see Ramirez on the back of a Cleveland jersey, I remember going up to Manny Ramirez at Camden Yards 30 years ago and saying, "Hey Manny, any chance I can get you on my show?" Knowing full well he grew up in Brooklyn, he said to me, "I don't speak English."
But he said it just like that, right?
He said it in perfect. I don't speak
Yeah, I know. That's
English.
Manny.
That's what he said. That was
Manny was
Manny being
Manny.
Manny, and we had Manny Machado here. He was Manny being Manny. This Ramirez really strikes me as a different cat. I saw him at the. I just. He's a throwback kind of dude, and for your organization to sort of embrace him, we're waiting for the first marriage here, right?
Oh.
Austin Hayes gone, Santander, Mullins, the guys that were here when the team stunk 3 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Rutschman feels like he's part of the DNA of the thing, and Henderson, but they haven't paid anybody. And Boris guys, Westberg, Henderson, they're not signing. They're Boris guys. So, like, that's going to go to the 11th hour no matter what, or not the 13th hour,
Mm-hmm.
quite frankly. It's going to go off the clock. And so for the Guardians to make investments, and I do go back to when Lofton, Ramirez, Baerga, they locked those guys up while they had Martinez and Eddie Murray and Hershey. They had these veteran
Keep
guys,
going, baby. Yeah.
Grover. I mean, I was there for all of that. But I think about Ossenmacher and the late, great, and I mean great, Jim Poole, who we lost recently.
Yeah.
I know he gave up a big home run in Tribe Lore, but a dear friend of mine. But that bullpen was also even 30 years ago, but it was about locking up players 30 years ago when Jacobs Field was built, about how can you keep your core. I don't think that's changed at all, and I think it's even magnified as far as how you figure out your finances and keep your Frankie Lindors as long as you can.
It's interesting with Lindor because they offered him the same money that the Mets did for 5 years. My thought was this, Frank, you know what? You ball for 5 years, you're getting in another 10 at what you want. So that one perturbed me. Jose did take a hometown, I'm talking Jose Ramirez, did take a hometown discount. But you know what? Andre Knott, the Bally's field reporter, dear friend, he's probably the closest media person to Jose. And Jose's in what, the low 20s. You know what he has said? He goes, listen, my family's back in the Dominican. I take care of my entire family. By that, I mean aunts, uncles, cousins, relatives. I've got 3 houses. I've got 4 boats. I've got 6 cars. I can do anything I want at any time. I mean, what more do I need? When you look at the cash that's there, and yeah, could he have gotten more elsewhere? But he's comfortable in Cleveland. We know that. You go other places. Ask Frankie. Francisco, about the media in New York City. I would think the media in Baltimore is fair. That if somebody does something
There's
wrong,
no media in Baltimore. There's
oh,
literally no
okay.
criticism.
And we talked about that earlier in
There's just no
Cleveland.
criticism of the team.
Yeah, how people, and they've lost my respect and listeners' respect.
Oh, I mean,
And,
Viviano retired last week. Like
oh,
there is no pressure on the Orioles other than what they see on Major League Baseball Network. They get their
okay.
pressure when Kevin Brown, gets thrown off the air. That pressure always comes externally, not internally, because the Orioles have managed to own the message with Mr. Angelos.
We don't, what happens in this city, that's the team that plays with the orange helmets, and it really is embarrassing how people, I mean, most of the media in town need D-pads when they're reporting on that team, and fans are starting to see through that in a big, big way. But the bottom line is, and I got complaints yesterday about how the Guardians are an embarrassment to the city because of the quote unquote cheap owners. Here's all I know. The Dolans are good, moral people. What happened last year when they brought in Zunino and when they brought in Josh Bell? You know, spending close to $30 million. Well, they flopped in a big, big way. So they're going to be judicious. But if someone's there that they need to sign, they are going to sign him, make him more than a fair offer. I mean, Nestor, this team is 23 over 500. Some media people had them winning 65 games. I believe they're close to that right now. I mean, what
the
more do
loss
you
of
want?
Tito was perceived. And by the way, Munch Bishop is our guest here on WNST and Baltimore Positive. If you're out listening and hear this familiar Midwestern voice, Tito was perceived as, the strength of what was going on there, and him leaving was probably perceived, and it was time for him, right? He had a lot of issues, right?
Bro, he
But
had so many health issues. It was scary, and he just wanted to get healthy again. He didn't want to be struggling to get up every day and get out of bed.
well, and the thought was, what's going to happen when he's not a part of it? I think that would happen to Baltimore after
Yeah.
Hyden and Elias aren't here anymore. We'd say, well, they did a pretty good job. Who's, like so far so good. Who's next? Mr. Rubenstein better be paying them. And well, but the stability part of it is something for my pal Mark Shapiro, ran your baseball team for a decade and a half, right? And now is trying to figure it out in Toronto and dealing with
Boy, he's not
players.
doing it, is he?
Yeah, it's right. Well, it's not easy to do, even when you have a lot of money. And building that kind of an organization where you have the confidence in the system and your plan, or as Ozzy would say, just let it all play out. You got to just let it happen. And for your organization, that's happened because they don't go out and spend a lot of money, much to the chagrin of some of their fans, but also trying to be responsible on what the money they do spend. Because once you start wasting money on Chris Davis in Baltimore, it becomes easier to look and say, well, let's get this right this time.
And it's interesting that you said, and this is going to blow your mind. Maybe it won't. And I call them the rabble, okay? Those fans. There are fans that say, even though the Guardians, by the way, they are 65 and 42, will say, well, you know what? They don't spend any money. And the Browns do. We don't go back 15 years and look at the winning percentages of both teams. You can't look at the number of wins because, of course, 162 to 17 doesn't compare. But the bottom line is there are fans that will say that. Well, I'm not going because they don't spend money. They spend it in the right place. But you know what else, though, Nestor? I'm not being cliche and towing the company line, because I do wish they would have added a stud pitcher. They tried. But the bottom line is this: so much in baseball, and you just said it about Chris Davis, it's not what you spend a lot of the times, it's who you spend it on.
Well, and good investments all the way around. I'm just saying the Ramirez thing, that feels like a good investment to me. And it feels
very
like
good.
One of those happy stories we're trying to get with our own ball players.
I mean, Clase, they locked up Clase. I mean, another great story. They look at the pieces they identify that are integral. And you mentioned bullpens too. Flashback not that long ago to 2016. Some of the best bullpen pitching I have seen in my lifetime, and you've seen it too in Birdland, was Andrew Miller turning it over to Cody Allen. Andrew Miller was Mariano Rivera-like in his roles with the Cleveland Indians that year.
Yeah, he was a difference maker,
yes,
true difference maker. Yeah, and we traded away Rodriguez and watched him pitch for the Red Sox for years coming in here as, not a top of the rotation guy, but the Orioles could use a 3 and they had to go out and spend to get a 3. Munch Bishop's here. I mentioned Tito and the loss of Tito. They're doing okay without him, right? They have a way of doing things there.
Yeah, Stephen Vogt is still I call it on the job training. especially with his third base coach too, Roglic Odor. Granted, he managed Double-A for years, which means he did coach third base. I see some things, like I mentioned, at least 3 times in the last month, they tried to score from third with the infield drawn in and no force. Now, you say that's a contact thing, as soon as the ball is hit, but the third base coach also has to remind them the situation. Vogt at times has left the pitcher in one batter too long. At times he's done a lefty-righty thing a little too much. Grover was nuts with the lefty-righty thing. But how could you argue with the results, losing 3 starting pitchers, and his team is 65-42? Nestor, I can't argue with the results in any way, shape, or form.
Munch Bishop is here. I will give him now the floor. We talked Poco, we talked Michael Stanley, we've talked Blossom, we talk Guardians, we talked Orioles, we talked Major League Draft, we've compared coffee and mustard. By the way, when you were mentioning Michael Stanley giving shout outs to city names, I know how to pronounce Youngstown and Akron and Canton and Parma and whatever. I would always call Massillon Massillon, and
Massillon.
I was listening to the radio out there. So tell you, I was listening to WONE or whatever it was, classic rock, and there was an ad on. And the girl kept saying Massillon.
It is Massillon, bro.
So now I know it's Massillon, but I've been getting it wrong for 55 years.
When Jagger and the Stones in the 70s came to the Akron Rubber Bowl, it was so cool when he came on stage. So you're in good company. And he came out and said, so good to be in the area of Akron, Canton, Massillon. So maybe you and Jagger share the same lingo.
I love that. My favorite town back when I was a Ravens fan and not just a reporter, all the years on the road, we would always take the bus trip in, and we would always stop in Canton for the football, the American football.
Hall of Fame, yeah.
Bloody American football, and the little cap that sat on the side of the road there, and it's now Disneyland, right? Mm-hmm. But on the way in, we passed this town called Ravenna. Ravenna,
Ravenna, Ohio, baby.
So we would always stop there in Ravenna at the fast food joints there and let people get a bite to eat, because we thought going into Ohio and putting down the purple flag in Ravenna would be like it's almost Ravens. It feels like like this is Steeler country, this is Ravens country.
Munch, I gotta watch out. You put that purple flag in Ravenna. People there do have quite a few guns per capita.
Yeah, I would think they're voting the wrong way this year. They're part of the problem in Ohio and Pennsylvania.
Yes, amen. Oh, yeah, 100%.
So the whole Pennsylvania Turnpike's an ad for a criminal. But so nonetheless, speaking of criminals, the football team. I want to give you the floor, because you and I, and by the way, I've managed to have a little bit of this scone that my wife thought was just okay. The pistachio cherry that I'm very pleased with, and the coconut blueberry, which is maybe the best scone I've ever had in my life. I still have 3 bites of that. You can see the blueberries in there. I want to let you go, because when you and I were dining and I was eating that shipwreck at Lucky's Monday morning before Sammy Hagar out there, you went off just over breakfast about your departure from the Browns. And you and I met under tough circumstances. Art had moved the team here 30 years ago. You and Kenny Rhoda and Bud Shaw and like all the Cleveland media, that you were all chasing Kevin Byrne here and pissed at David and all of that. I've known you guys a long, long time without your team, bringing a team back, the learner thing, all the quarterbacks, all the coaches, friends of mine like Phil Savage and old friends of mine like
Phil's George good people, Kokinis, you know that?
George Kokinis, all these people, through it all. I'm sure DeCosta could have come out there and run the Browns a couple times and didn't want to. And Ozzie, all of that. Your disdain for the Browns over breakfast, I don't want to say it shocked me, but I was like, whoa, dude. So I want to give you the floor so you can tell my audience how pissed off you are, because, I think you have a right to be. I mean, the Browns have not been good civic partners since Art left, and literally, I mean, Art was a pretty decent sort. Art. Every time I hear Cleveland Clinic and a symphony, all that, Art did a lot there, and then Art left, and since then, it's been worse, a lot worse.
Yeah. As an owner, Art made some mistakes. All owners make some mistakes, but the bottom line is, moving the team was dastardly. It was criminal. But Nestor, I want to go back with you. I have been a staunch, had been Browns fan for 65 plus years. I was a little kid at 4 and 5 that had his face pressed up against the frosted pane of glass on a cold winter day, waiting for my dad and uncles to come home from a game.
You
It
were
was,
Ralphie, is what you're
yeah,
telling me.
yeah, the kind of neighborhood where, everybody kind of lived within a couple blocks of each other, the old inner city Cleveland neighborhoods with the families. And, hoping that my dad, praying it was going to bring me a program and, some kind of memorabilia from the Browns game. That was me. From day one, when the Haslams took over, I'm thinking, you know what? I don't like this guy. He's crooked. Went back to the radio station. We all had a little meeting, a tete-a-tete with all the sports reporters. Tony Grossi was one of them, some of the other hosts. And they asked me my thoughts. I said, the guy's a crook. And they all said, no, you're nuts. You just don't like da 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 da. Well, number one, he did have a Tennessee orange tie on. Yes, sir. Different shades of orange. So that kind of bothered me. Come on, you got enough money, you're a million, multimillionaire, have somebody get you a proper Browns tie. But number two, shortly after the pilot Flying J, when his company was bilking millions of dollars of clients by saying, "Oh, we pumped this much gas for you," when they didn't pump that much gas, my assessment was borne out in a big way. Just about everything that comes out of his mouth and D. Haslam's mouth, is embarrassing to this city. How we got stuck with them is beyond me. We're not
Her running
deserving
the
of that.
front after the Deshaun Watson thing was
But the
really.
Watson thing, put me over there. I'm going to
I
say
mean, it's
something.
also. I mean, Daniel Snyder putting his wife out in front of that mess. Man, it's itchy. I mean, all these billionaires. I mean, I'm going to go into it Labor Day, but man,
Oh, I can't wait for that. Yeah.
what a
You know
club
what?
did. I've been around these people, and I'll tell you what, they threw me out because I don't breathe the right air or smell the
Thank
right
you.
way,
I stepped out
and
on my own
that's who
because
they
it was,
are. It's
yeah.
really who they are. There's an
And
arrogance that
yeah, there
is.
is an arrogance. And I got, even just personal stories I could tell you from that got
An
back to me
arrogance
for,
that Art Modell did not have, an arrogance that people in sports didn't have 40 years ago because they felt
no,
like
you're
they needed
right.
the fans. They felt like
I
they
will
needed
say
the
that in
fans.
spite of his dastardly deed of moving his team. But the bottom line is the Watson signing, you know what? Number one, despicable human being, just came out, wants people to like him, but he's using unsavory words in his press conference, talking about all the BS that's gone out. He's the biggest BS that's involved with this football team. Something I'm proud of too, not solicited from me. My daughter was involved in the Manhattan Browns Backers Club. Okay. The day they signed Watson, she resigned from her post. And I was so proud of her. Showed me a box of all her Browns gear. Her Browns gear ended up where my Browns gear did, okay? At a homeless shelter for people to wear because I have no interest in them anymore. Now, when your guy, Joe Flacco, came in last year, I still won't go to games, but I listened to games. Actually, I won't listen, but I watched games in a big way because Joe Flacco's a guy that you could rally around. When Joe Flacco departed, by the way, Watson was the one that told Dorsey and Stefanski, I don't want Flacco back. He's more popular than me. If I go down, then the fans will rally around him too. But no, that was just the final straw. And you know what, bro? I've got over under talking to NFL people 6 games for DeShame, as I call him this year, for all the money they're paying him. Most NFL people are taking under 6, and I feel that Micah Parsons puts him down the first game of the season when they play the Cowboys. But right now, with him at quarterback, I'm going to say this: people spend money. You go to games. I'm not going any longer. And at the bars and restaurants and the vendors downtown. And that's another thing. Haslam's trying to get the team out of downtown. Downtown needs this football team. You know what? That stadium is fine. There would have been one game last year where they could have used a dome. They're not getting a Super Bowl. Come on. You know what I mean? They might get one NCAA Final Four in the next 50 years. But the bottom line is the guy's an unsavory character. He's dishonest. He's immoral. And I can care less about that football team. There you go.
Munch
I had the
Bishop,
floor. I
hard
spoke.
words. Oh yeah. Well, I mean, there comes a point where, like when Howard Cosell said, "I just don't want to be calling guys giving each other brain damage anymore." That you just say like, this isn't. I have my own issues with the league and head trauma and
Now 18 games? They got to be kidding me.
lies and like and covering it honestly as a human being, covering other human beings. I do not miss being in a room with people who thought I wasn't good enough to share their air.
Thank you.
And that for me, after investing 30 years of my life in, they managed every part of my schedule for training camp, for just everything we ever did here as a company. I will be speaking out on that on Labor Day weekend as the season kicks off. Munch is kicking off his pennant drive out there. I mean, do you think there's going to be a Cleveland baseball parade in your lifetime? I mean, you've seen the basketball one, right? I mean,
dude, you know what? I had a Ferris Bueller's Day Off on that. I'm going to have to shoot you a picture. I have to text you one. Is that I jumped up on a float, was invited by some of the media people. One of the PR guys came by because we didn't have the Cavs games and looked at me, put his hands on his hips. And James Jones, the champ, put his hand on my shoulder. He goes, go ahead. So I'll shoot you pictures of me on the float doing the Ferris Bueller, waving away through the parade. But yeah, I do feel I will see a Guardians championship in my lifetime. Now, I according to the docs, if I play the right cards, he goes, you can get hit by a car leaving the clinic. The bottom line is, hopefully I got another 20 years left. I'll see one within that time.
All right. Well, make sure your heart's beating through it all. Make sure we get back to Lucky's and get some of these delicious scones. I've been munching on this during this long segment. Munch Bishop, Cleveland legend, Orioles and the Guardians getting together this weekend. Rock and roll, Michael Stanley, Rock Hall, Blossom, and a really good look at
Massillon,
the Orioles and the Guardians.
Canton.
I learned a lot. Canton.
We got it all. I learn a lot every time I'm with you, bro.
Back to Akron. We are BaltimorePositive.com. Stay with us.